Thank you, JT and Kelly. Let's stand for a moment, brothers and sisters. I welcome you in the Savior's name to this Sunday before Christmas. It was Henry Ford who said, "I invented the modern age." And if you look at what he did for the automobile industry and the assembly line, you could say, yeah, you were right. When the first atomic bomb was exploded, it was the beginning of an atomic age. But there is a far more new age that has dawned in time through the birth of Jesus. Luke doesn't tell us explicitly that it's the dawn of a new age. That's not Luke's method. None of the gospel writers write like the epistles. The gospel writers show us that it's a new age, that Jesus' birth is the sunrise of a new age. And he does it in so many different ways. I'm just going to focus on one. And that word, which constantly is repeated in the first two chapters of Luke, is the word joy and rejoice. Gabriel, the messenger from God, sent to Zechariah in the temple, said, he will be a joy to many people. Then the messenger from heaven in Luke 2 to the shepherds said to the shepherds, I bring you good news of a what? Of great joy. And then John himself in utero, in his mother's uterus, her womb, at the sound of Mary's voice, what did unborn John, 6 months old in the womb, do? He jumped for joy. So joy is the signal in Luke's gospel that the birth of Jesus triggers the dawn of a new age. Do you feel that joy? I know Jesus isn't born this December. I know that Jesus' birthday is not December 25th. But the sheer fact that God has entered into time and space ought to trigger in good people everywhere, what? Celebration and joy. Isaac Watts got it right. Joy to the world. The Lord has come. Let earth receive her King. Let's celebrate first in prayer. Father, thank you that we are given a whole smorgasbord of emotions. We can be sad. Some even get depressed in the holiday season. Yet you've given us, on the other end of the spectrum, joy, rejoicing. And if there's someone here, Lord, whose flame of joy has gone down and is low and is almost ready, perhaps, to go out due to the Christmas rush, I pray that you would inflame it today and allow the music, the songs of Zion that we celebrate this morning to put fuel into that fire, to allow all of us, boys and girls, teens, men and women of every age, true joy that God has visited us in the person of Jesus Christ. Let us celebrate by your power for your glory. We do it in Jesus' mighty name. Let's worship. Who is to inherit the promises God gave to Abraham in Genesis 15? How do we know who was Abraham's successor? God promised Abraham an unconditional covenant, but Abraham died. So who inherits the promises? There's no verse that says, okay, you now inherit the promises given to Abraham. Biblical scholarship finally realized that the Old Testament is not silent about that. The Old Testament tells us that we've never seen it. He shows us that, for example, the life of Jacob mimics the life of Abraham. The pattern that Abraham lived is reproduced in the life of Jacob. If you put their two lives together and take the key elements, they line up like a perfect jigsaw puzzle. And then when you take Joseph's life, his life pattern lines up perfectly with the life of Jacob. And when you line up the life of Joseph, Joseph's life lines up perfect with the pattern from the previous patriarchs. That's the Old Testament way of telling us who inherits the promises that God gave to Abraham. So the Old Testament shows us. It doesn't tell us. Well, we realize now that the New Testament does the same thing, but we've never known it. So in my studies now, and I'm coming to an end of it, thank the Lord, the New Testament does the exact same thing. Often we think that the only way we would know that a New Testament passage fulfills the Old Testament is the phrase we often see, thus in order to fulfill the word of the Lord, or thus it is written in Scripture. That's clear, that's plain. But there's another way that we're just discovering. There's another way that New Testament writers take an Old Testament story and copy it when they record the New Testament story. I'm going to show you one example in just a moment. It's the passage I want to expound in a few minutes. But here's the Old Testament story. In 2 Samuel 6, David is going to take the ark, which has been in Philistine territory, the Ark of the Covenant. Do you know what the Ark of the Covenant is? Everybody know what the Ark of the Covenant is? Yep. There's many things we could say about it, but it was the localized presence of God. The tablets of stone were inside. There's a gold slab on the top, and on top of that is called the mercy seat, but that's where the presence of God dwelt in a shiny cloud, a Shekinah glory cloud. That was the presence of God. It was overshadowed by two cherubs, two cherubim, the same cherubim that guarded the way to the tree of life in the garden. So David went to the house of Obed-Edom, where the ark had sat for a while. And he picks it up, puts it on a cart, and he travels back to Jerusalem to put the ark where it belongs, in the tent. Eventually Solomon would build a temple, and he would put the ark in the temple, a more permanent structure. Well, Luke takes that story of David bringing the ark back to where it belongs, and he reproduces that story in the story of Mary and Elizabeth. You'll see how he takes the main elements from the Samuel story and puts them into the Mary story. And the question is, as the chart should now indicate, what is Luke showing us? Remember, Luke doesn't teach us. Luke shows us. That's the gospel way of communicating to people. He shows us. For example, on the left side, you'll see, look at the verbs. David arose, verb number 1. Number 2, he journeyed to where? To Judah to bring up the ark of God. Notice Mary's story that Luke records. Mary arose, same verb. And journeyed, same verb, to a town in Judah. Next level. We're told that the place where the Ark of the Covenant was held was in the hill country. And we're told in the story in Luke that Mary traveled to the hill country in Judah. That is in the south of Israel. We're told that David celebrated when he brought the Ark of the Covenant, joyfully. That's the tone, the note, the mood, joy. And we're told that the baby in Elizabeth's womb, that would be John the Baptist in utero, leaped for joy at the recognition that Mary, pregnant with Jesus, had arrived. We're also told that David was shouting as a form of celebration when the Ark of God was being returned to where it should be. And the verb that Luke uses to describe Elizabeth's awareness of Mary and the child within Mary, he uses the same verb. Elizabeth shouts. David asks a question. How shall the ark of the Lord come to me? And Elizabeth asks a question. Who am I that the mother of my Lord should come and visit me? We're told that the home where the ark rested was the home of Obed-Edom, and the family, the home was blessed while the ark was there. And what is it that Elizabeth says to Mary and to the baby inside Mary's womb, or to Mary and to the baby inside Mary's womb? Blessed are you among women, not above women, among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. Same word. We're told that the ark remained in the home of Obed-Edom for 3 months. And we're told that Mary remained in the home of Elizabeth for 3 months. End of story. The question now is, what is Luke showing us? What is Luke showing us by taking an Old Testament story and taking the key elements and transferring them to the new story, the story of Mary? So, what came to your mind? What came to your mind through this story? What's Luke, the author, showing you? What's Luke showing us? Yes. Mary is the new Ark of the Covenant. She is the new dwelling place of God. She's only an ark for 9 months. Because that's the gestation time of the baby, right? Do you understand what Luke is doing here? He's showing us that God has changed his address, right? If you're going to send mail, you don't send it to the temple, you send it to Mary. Right? Because God lives in Mary. Do you understand that? She's the new ark of the covenant. The question then is after Mary gives birth to Jesus, what happens to the Spirit of God? Where does the Spirit go? Eventually, Jesus gives the Spirit to who? His people. And so who is the Ark of the Covenant now? You. Me. We who are dwelt by the Spirit of God. Now, do you see how the Old Testament connects with the New? How the New Testament story fulfills the New? See how that? He doesn't tell us that by explicit words. What does he do? He shows us. All right. I'm not sure if I'm communicating. I'm not sure if this is registering in your mind. It's hard for me to interpret silence, but I'm going to assume that perhaps I've said enough about this. This might be new to you, but we're discovering in the New Testament that this occurs thousands of times. In my current work, I've just seen it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And one day, it'll be available in book form all over the place, written by many, many people. But this is how the New Testament writers tell us. The New Testament story is not an individual story free from history. No, it's tied to the Old Testament. Any questions? Any questions? Clarifications of anything I've said? No? All right. Now let's examine the text itself after prayer. Would you pray with me? What a treasure we have, Lord, in the gospel, a treasure in the scripture, but also what a treasure we have here in these clay vessels, the Spirit of God who indwells us. Perfect God indwelling his people by his Spirit. What a treasure. And the story of how that came to be is now presented to us. It's more than simply a story. It's a divine story. It's inspired. And yet it will not mean anything to us unless you open our ears and give us understanding by the Spirit of God. And so I'm praying that the intention of the biblical writer, Luke, would be an intention that's realized and reached and fulfilled in each one of us today. For wherever we are in our Christian walk, whatever level of understanding we have of Scripture, let it be enlarged. And let the person of Jesus, Jesus Christ, be better understood and our faith deeper as a result of our gathering together. Bless the preaching of your word around the world, wherever it is being taught. And bless our church family as they travel. Bring us back together and soon. We pray for your glory. In Christ's name. Jesse Brown grew up as a sharecropper's son in the fields of Mississippi. A sharecropper is someone who rents land from an owner and grows crops and tries to make a living. It was not a good system. It was a carryover from the days of the Civil War. Jesse was African American, had brothers, and they worked in the fields, sometimes as many as 10 hours a day. And they would trudge home on a country dirt road in bare feet and coveralls. There was a problem, though. It was not simply a stroll home. A school bus went by every day. And as the school bus went by each day, they noticed these brothers walking in bare feet in dirty clothes. And the children in the school bus got bold. And they began to open up the windows as they traveled by the boys and shouted obscenities at the three brothers, saying, "Hey, you dirty nigger!" Cursing them, laughing at them. This is what they heard every day. This racial hostility, simply for being black. One day, things went overboard. It was not enough for these boys to call these dirty niggers. The boys inside the bus decided they would up the ante a little bit and ratchet up the abuse. And so they gathered up as much spit as they could create in their mouths. And as the boys came close, they spit on all of the brothers. Gobs of saliva are just splattering these boys. You can imagine a school bus full of kids spitting on your three sons or your three daughters. Jesse had a lot of saliva to wipe off on that occasion. And it made him very upset. He saw one of his brothers crying. The little brother just couldn't take it. It was just too much for him. Jesse was on a trajectory to be used greatly by God. To be used greatly by the U.S. Navy, in fact. But this moment in time motivated him to want to just leave home and leave Mississippi and go somewhere else where he would not face that kind of racial abuse. He needed somebody to come along and help him through those difficult days. He needed someone to come alongside who was older and say, "Jesse, let's go through this together. Let's work together so that what God has planned for you can be realized." Mary did not choose to be the mother of Jesus. She didn't sign up for it. There was no list on the synagogue wall saying, "Anybody who would like to sign up to be the mother of the Messiah, just sign your name here." Gabriel just showed up one night and said, "Excuse me, we need your body. You're going to be the mother of the root of David. You're going to be the mother of the Messiah, and his kingdom will have no end." She had no say in it. She didn't sign up for it. She had a huge responsibility. Can you imagine what went through her mind when she woke up the next morning? What do you think she thought? If you were married, what would you have thought? I'm not a mother, and I'm not a woman. That's probably somewhat self-evident. But here's what I would think. If God had called me to this gargantuan, never-before, unprecedented responsibility, I would have said, did I imagine that? I mean, was that just because I had too much liver last night? Is this simply a product of indigestion? Did I really receive a message from Almighty God? Mary needed help. Mary needed support and confirmation that what had been told her was really, really true. She needed to be sure. We know this because immediately after the meeting with Elizabeth, she breaks out in song, but not before. Mary's Magnificat comes after this critical meeting with Elizabeth and Mary. So I'm going to then ask you to look at chapter 1, verse 39 of Luke. We are out of our series a little bit in Luke's Gospel. And I want to go through this passage, and I want you to see two things which Luke emphasizes. Number one, Elizabeth, the relative of Mary, confirms what the angel Gabriel had said to Mary. The message she received was so huge it needed confirmation. And a woman, it's a woman that she goes to for that needed and essential confirmation that I'm not crazy. I didn't have too many liver and onions last night. This is for real. This is a message from God. And then at the end of the passage, verse 45, she uses the word which has the idea of congratulations. She congratulates Mary on her faith. Let's read the text. I encourage you to follow along with me. Immediately after the vision and the dream and the message that Mary received in verse 38, verse 39 says, at that time, Luke wants us to see that these two stories are attached. They're together. We are to read them in tandem. Mary set out in a hurry for a town in the hill country of Judea. That's in the south. She lives way up in the north. That's where she and Joseph are going to live and raise Jesus eventually. But she takes a trip south to the hill country. Notice that even though that trip would have taken 3 or 4 days, because it's 80 to 100 miles, Luke doesn't go over the journey. He doesn't tell us anything about the journey. All he wants to show is the interaction at the doorway of Elizabeth and Mary. Realize that Mary stayed there 3 months, but we're not given any information about all those conversations. And I'm sure those 2 pregnant women talked about 1,000 things. But there's one thing that Luke records in this story, and only one. It's when the door opens. Here it is. She entered Zechariah's house. Remember, Zechariah is now mute. Hearing from Gabriel, he doubted the message of Gabriel regarding birth of his future son, John. This is his house. So she entered Zechariah's house and greeted Elizabeth. And it happened that when Elizabeth, remember, she's 6 months pregnant with John. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the baby in her womb, notice, it's the word baby. It's the same word that Luke uses to describe Jesus outside of the womb in the manger. You see that? It's a baby inside the womb and it's a baby outside the womb. It's the exact same Greek word, brephos. The baby leaped, skirtako, jumped in her womb. Now, I've not been pregnant and I don't have any plans on being pregnant in the future, but all of you mothers, you who've gone through those 9 months can recall the somersaults and the jumping up and down of the babies in your womb. Well, Elizabeth, this is her firstborn. Remember, she's an aged woman, older woman. She interprets what happened in her tummy or her uterus. She interprets this. Elizabeth was filled with the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, and shouted at the top of her voice, "Blessed are you among women," not above women, "and blessed is the fruit of your womb. Who am I that the mother of my Lord? Who am I that the mother of my Lord?" Lord, see that word? Kurios. It's used 23 times in Luke 1 and 2 for the God of Israel. And now Luke uses it for who? Baby in Mary's womb. What is Luke telling us? Or what is Luke showing us? He's showing us that the baby in Mary's womb is who? None other than the God of Israel. This is Luke's way of teaching us. He doesn't tell us explicitly, he shows us. You have to be sharp. Blessed is the fruit of your womb. Who am I that the mother of my master, my Lord, should visit me? Because, look, when the sound of your greeting, speaking to Mary, the sound of your greeting reached my ears, the baby, same word again, brephos, jumped for joy in my womb. Now, how old is the baby in Mary's womb? She just heard about the message from Gabriel that she would conceive. How old is that little embryo? A couple of weeks at best. And yet, even though the embryo is only a couple of weeks old, a 6-month-old in the uterus, that 6-month-old baby recognizes the presence of God. So who is the first person in history to recognize the deity and the Messiah? An unborn child. First person. And the second person is who? Elizabeth, a woman. They're the first two in history that recognize explicitly the divinity of Jesus in the unborn womb. The baby jumps for joy. How did Elizabeth know that the jump was a jump for joy? How did she know it? Luke tells us she was filled with the Spirit. We're told in Luke 1 that John, the baby, was filled from the Spirit from the womb. And so we have the Spirit speaking to the Spirit from womb to womb, uterus to uterus. What's happening here? What is Luke doing, showing us with this information? What's he trying to tell us? He's telling us that Elizabeth had been prepared all her life for this moment in time to confirm the faith of Mary. Mary's just a teenager. She's been saddled with the responsibility of being mother to the Son of God. Oh, brother. Did I imagine that? Was I dreaming? Did I have too much pizza last night? Elizabeth's words confirmed what Mary had been told. Elizabeth's greeting and blessing of Mary and the baby confirms what Mary had been told. Remember what happened to Zechariah? After he came out of the temple, what was he supposed to do to the people? What does every priest do when they're finished with the temple duties? They come out and what do? They bless the people. But he's silent. So who takes his place? Elizabeth. Elizabeth now performs the work of what? Priest. Why is this important? Because Adam and Eve were both made to be priests in the presence of God in the Garden of God. But under Moses, the priesthood was lost, except to a few men born in the tribe of Aaron. Only Aaronic people, only people who, with Aaron as their daddy, could serve in the holy place and have immediate communion with God. And so men and women lost the priesthood. That is, the ability to commune with God directly. The priesthood has just been restored to both men and women. And Luke uses a woman to show that what Zechariah was supposed to do, now she does. There's two people in the Gospel of Luke who bless. At the end, Jesus lifts up his hands and blesses the people. At the beginning of the Gospel, who is it? It's a woman. See, what Luke is doing is showing us truth. Peter, in the epistles, says it explicitly. This is why Peter, in 1 Peter 2:9 said, but you is plural, referring to men and women in the congregation, you are a royal what? Priesthood. How did that happen? This is the answer. Epistles tell us explicitly, the Gospels show us. And this is what Luke is showing. That God had prepared Elizabeth all her life for this moment to confirm the faith of a young lady. Now let's move quickly to the next and last verse. In your Bible, it begins with the word blessing. And it looks like this is simply a repeat of the two blesseds earlier in the paragraph. But that's again the weakness of our English language. This next word is different from the ones used earlier in the passage. Elizabeth basically says to Mary, congratulations, well done. Congratulations to her, Mary, who what? Trusted that what the Lord promised her would come true. What is Elizabeth doing? She is celebrating and confirming and affirming a young woman's trust in the Word of God. And Mary becomes a better Eve, who failed in the hill country, in the garden, to trust the Word of God. Mary becomes a better Eve. In a long line of women through church history who have trusted the Word of God even when their husbands don't believe and grow old and grow downward in their Christian life, which is a common pattern for some reason. Luke here elevates women and says to all readers everywhere, girls, women, teenage girls can be giants of faith. You know that in first century Israel, in court, a woman was not allowed to give testimony in a court because no one believed that a woman could get it straight. You couldn't rely on the testimony of a woman. They are second class. Luke says, I disagree. Elizabeth confirms as a witness that what had been said to Mary was true. And then John records the second witness. John jumps for joy and says, I'm witness number 2, that the baby inside Mary's womb is none other than the divine Son of God. Now, let me suggest some things you can take home from this text. Some things that all of us, I think, can in some way benefit from practically in our day-to-day life. First is focusing on all of you who, in some way, have been like Elizabeth. Elizabeth was barren all her life. But yet we're told it was not punishment. We're told in chapter 1 that both she and her husband were righteous in the sight of God. And yet, she had never had a child. She's infertile. How did she handle that suffering based on what we see here in this text? How did she handle all that suffering and all the shame associated with having no children? By her conversation here with Mary, what kind of a woman is she? Is she bitter? Is she resentful? Is she just wallowing in the slough of despond or despair? No. See, God had used all those years of waiting on God, that suffering, to prepare her for this moment in time. Instead of being angry with God and bitter against Him, she remained humble. She remained humble all those years. And God always uses humble people in His church. God uses humble people as the means of encouragement and support in His church. Your suffering is not wasted. Your suffering has a purpose. Elizabeth didn't know that one day God would call on her to be a witness to Mary. She never knew that. But she trusted through those lean years, those empty years, when there was no cradle in her home with babies crying. All those years she trusted that God was going to use her suffering one day, and it happened. Are you suffering today? It's often easy to feel like this is without purpose. What's the point? God, tell me why you're putting me through all this. I understand that. This woman trusted that God knew what He was doing and had a purpose for her suffering. Because she needed to be a spokesman at a moment in time. You realize this is one of the most pivotal moments in all of human history? Right here, in the hill country. And she was ready. And how was she ready? To suffer. There's something else that comes my mind. What kind of a mother or a woman does it take to recognize that the children of a friend, the children maybe of a cousin, the children of another woman that you know, that her child is going to rise high and gain prominence, and your son is not going to gain the same prominence. And yet you have the humility to praise that child and to praise the mother of that child. When you know that your child will never achieve the feats of that other woman. What kind of a woman does it take? You know, it's easy to be jealous and envious of what other families have and what other kids are doing in somebody else's family. But Elizabeth was not jealous, was she? Not envious. She didn't see Mary as her competitor or her rival. She had the humility. Well, she had the humility to bless the fruit of her womb and to bless Mary and to say basically, way to go, knowing that her son would never, ever be the son that Mary had. The fame, the stardom, the public status. Now let's think ahead with me. Come with me into the future. Why did John and Jesus form such a great team together? And no competition between John and Jesus. Why did John say about Jesus, he must increase and I must decrease? Well, the seeds were sown here with those two mothers. The seeds of unity, the seeds of cooperation between these two women bore fruit in the working relationship of Jesus and John, and why they worked together so well. So look at your kids, look at somebody else's kids, and say, this is where God wants my kids to be, and this is what he wants them to do. And God bless you for having your kids and seeing what they're doing. Be content with your kids. Be content with the level to which they rise, their intelligence, their ability to be smart, or what have you. Don't allow that jealousy and envy to interfere with you congratulating somebody when someone else's child rises to prominence. And this comes to my mind. When you look at Mary's song in the next paragraph, there's no trace of pride. There's no trace of condescension. I see a young girl full of faith and full of humility, in awe that God would use her. Luke is showing us the tremendous faith of women in his gospel, more than Matthew, more than Mark, and more than John. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is something that all of us are very aware of, and that's the status of an unborn child. Luke is not afraid to say that what's in the womb is a human being, fully. A child, a human being. And we can develop that. I mean, more and more medically speaking, we can see that a child, even at a very, very early age, has brain cells that are working. They respond to pokes. They're a human being. They're a valuable human being. But what I want to underscore here is that your child in the womb hears everything in the house. Your unborn child hears everything and is so much dependent on the mood of the mother, so dependent upon the disposition of the mother. They know so much more than we give them credit for. John, at 6 months in utero, recognizes an embryo in the womb that's only a couple of weeks old. That's incredible. That says so much about the value and the dignity of the unborn child. Finally, Elizabeth had no idea about the conversation between Gabriel and Mary. They didn't have email back then. There was no texting. Mary didn't text Elizabeth saying, "Guess who showed up at my house last night? I got a visitor from heaven." Elizabeth had no clue that what happened to Mary happened to Mary. Mary just showed up one day at her doorstep. You know, not too long ago, I was sitting in the front room of my house, late at night, which is really unusual. And I was reading. Curtains were closed. Half the world's asleep. And I heard something outside my door. And it sounded like someone was crying, weeping. I thought, why don't they just knock? So I waited again, and sure enough, the crying got louder. And I opened up the door, and there was a young person there, on their knees, weeping. A person who wanted to take their life. You never know who God's going to bring into your family, to your front doorstep. You never know who God's going to send to you who needs what? A word of encouragement, a word of comfort, a word of affirmation. God sends people to us. Are we ready? Are we prepared for those moments in time? Do we have enough room in our lives and boundaries in our lives that we're going to allow those people who are sometimes really, really, really in need to come into our lives and to help them? Instead of just slamming the door and saying, go to the emergency room, here's a number you can call, and just say, no, come on in, let's talk about it. That event turned out fine. And that person is doing great today. I didn't plan on it. He didn't text me ahead of time saying, by the way, I'm going to show up your door and start crying. And God's not going to inform you either. He's going to bring people to you. Will you be ready? Will your heart be big enough? Will you be humble enough to affirm what it is that God's doing in people's lives? Jesse needed help. God had plans for him. The U.S. government had big plans for him. He didn't know it, and the government didn't know it. He made history. He made history. And so, because his mother was a godly woman, it was Julia. Jesse said at supper, "Mom, sometimes people don't judge you by the words you use. They just judge you." Folded his arms. He said, "I've been called a dumb nigger by a dozen different people, and that's just this week." And his mother leaned across the table and said, "When someone calls you a nigger, and you feel sorry for him, you have to pity him because his mind has such a sorry way of expressing itself. Even when folks call you the most hateful things, they're still only words," she said. "Words can have all the power in the world or none at all. That's up to you." Wise words from a mother who knew what to say at the right time, and that was a pivot. Just like Mary and Elizabeth were at a pivot. This was a pivot for Jesse. And he went through it. Graduated from high school. Entered college. Unseen and unheard of before. Graduated. And then went on into the military to make a name. Thank God he had a mother of great faith who was ready to speak hope into his life at the right time. Thank you for listening. God bless us all this morning. Let's rise. Let's prepare to respond in song. Let's go home now with a blessing. This is a Christmas blessing, as you'll, I think, see quite readily. It's a place for me as the leader, a place for you. We take this from Luke's Gospel, Luke 24, where before he departs, he lifts his hands and blesses the disciples, telling us that the priesthood has returned through Jesus to his whole church. Glorious Father, let us be joyful yet humble before all people on Christmas Day.
Help us to look at the grace that serves your need, comfort the grieving,
strengthen the weak, giving hope to the hopeless, and feed the hungry.
most sharing the good news of Jesus with those who are perishing.
Let us go forth with joy.
Thanks be to God.
Amen. You are dismissed.